Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Where is Eva? I cannot
Has joined, ma'am.
Through which number? I cannot see her.
She has joined through a name only. You can see her name over there. Ma'am, could you please unmute yourself and start your video, please?
Eva, if you have come inside the meeting room, please switch on your video and your audio, please.
She had joined, but I think she's got disconnected again.
I cannot see a name called Eva in the participant list.
Yeah, she was in the waiting room. I just admitted
she's
her.
there. She's there.
Oh, she's trying to connect with it.
Right. Eva, please give your audio permission. It's still trying to connect. Maybe you have to click the option join with computer audio.
I think she's joining through the phone.
Yes, so even then there is a Wi-Fi cellular option that comes in the phone. So she has to click that. We are not able to, please unmute yourself, Eva. We are not able to hear you. Please unmute yourself.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Good morning, Eva.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Yes.
Now we can see you. Now we can hear you.
Thank you, ma'am, so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being there on time.
Okay.
I'll tell you something about this entire. Meanwhile, we have 3-4 minutes left. In between, I'll tell you.
No, ma'am. I have done all the reading. You have to everything that you sent me. I've gone through everything, so I'm aware of it. Shantani has sent me quite a lot of material about it. I'm just kind of, going through everything just for the one last time.
And I could see you that you were watching our YouTube live streaming every day. So
yes, ma'am, I was. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for being so enthusiastically involved in this entire deliberation.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. And ma'am, I'll just upload this thing. I'll just upload my PPT. All right, I'll just keep it standby. I want to keep it in standby. Kya karenge Supriya? Isko. Yes, and then I go back na. Okay. Now. Okay. PPT हम इसको PPT में खोले हैं. कैसे खोलना है? हाँ? सेशन नहीं है. ठीक है. Okay, good. To Eva. Yeah. खोल लिया. ठीक है. अभी खोल लिया है. ठीक है. Good. Good. इसको कैसे करेंगे? इसको हटाते हैं. That was so convenient. Good. Now they can hear me and they can see me. I need
now we are almost at 11. So if you allow us, and Eva, if you are prepared, can we officially start?
Yes, I am prepared, ma'am. Yes, we can officially start.
Should we start?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Good morning and Johar. I, Principal Investigator for UGC Stride, Dr. Ranjana Singh, together with my colleague, Co-Investigator for UGC Stride, Component 1 Jharkhand, Dr. Shantari Banerjee, two of our research assistants, Mr. Binod Kumar and Ms. Hani Kumari. We welcome you all to the 6-day online guest lecture series, which is a national event. As you are aware of, we had started this guest lecture series on 5th of July, and this is the fourth day when we have together with us Dr. Eva Margaret Hansdak as our speaker for the day. Before I introduce you to the speaker, please allow me some time to tell you about why Eva as a choice for this ecofeministic perspective. As you are aware of, ecofeminism is a comparatively newer theory, and you came across during these past 3 days that it had its origin in 1974. So basically, there are two disciplines that have been looking at ecofeminism. One is English, and the second is philosophy. And we in history and other social sciences are trying to take this lens, acquire this lens from humanities and look at our subjects. Our subjects are Adivasis and tribes across India, basically. So all those participants who are interested in tribal studies, a brief introduction before I read the formal bio note of Dr. Eva Margaret Hansdak is, Dr. Margaret Hansdak is herself a Santhali tribal woman, and she is a Sena voice, a voice which is trained in that academic discipline in which we talk, and is clear, loud, and has meanings to her voice. My association with her is that we work in the same university. And I have been hearing her. Santhal, as you know, is one of the 5 biggest tribes of the entire world. Keep aside India. Santhalis are the most populous tribes in India, and they have a substantial presence not only in Jharkhand, but they are substantially present in Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Assam, and all other parts of India, including Bengal. So this Santhal tribes needs to be talked about, needs to be represented, and this is what makes Eva more important and more relevant for an ecofeministic discussion on the topic we are gathered here to talk on. Now, formally, Dr. Eva Margaret Hansdak is the head of the Department of English of Gosner College, Ranchi University, Jharkhand. She has been teaching for past 26 years and has publications on tribal women and tribal oral literature. She is currently involved in translating writings by tribal writers from Hindi and Santhali into English, and she can speak Santhali beautifully. She is also a reviewer for the UGC CARE listed journal Translation Studies, published by NIM CIIL Mysore. CIIL Mysore is a Center for Institute of Indigenous Languages Mysore, which studies all languages in India and brings out publications in that. Besides academics, she has been actively involved in tribal women's issue and was invited to participate at the United Nations Working Group on Indigenous Population at Geneva in 1996 as a non-government representative. Her current endeavor is to promote readership and research of literature produced by tribal writers of Jharkhand. As you know, the situation as it exists is primarily tribals are believed to be illiterate community who don't have a written past. So there is dearth of converting the oral past into a written record. Eva Margaret Hansdak is involved in this process of converting this literature, oral literature, which is popularly called orature in tribal studies these days, into a written medium. Today, she is going to talk on the topic Reflections of Ecofeminisms in the Writings by Tribal Women of Jharkhand. Eva, we are honored, we are happy to hear you as a speaker for the day, and it could not have been any other person but you who would have talked about Santhali women, being Santhali yourself. So you are going to give us this insider's perspective that we have been talking about so regularly. Welcome once again to this platform of UGC Stride, and kindly consenting to be our speaker for the day and sharing your knowledge with us. So welcome, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much. Okay, can you see me?
Yeah, we can see you, we can hear you clearly.
And okay, and can the participants also see me now?
Right, everybody is looking at you
Okay.
constantly. We can see you.
Okay, thank you so much. And first of all, to begin today's session, I would like to express my gratitude to both Nirmala College and to Amity University for giving me this platform to talk about something I'm so passionate about, that is tribal writings. And I have been working on this area for the past few years, and I hope I'll be able to do justice to it today. And first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Sister Jyoti Kespota, the principal of Nirmala College, Dr. Raman Kumar Jha, Vice Chancellor of Amity University, Professor Dr. Ajit Kumar Pandey, the Director of Amity Jharkhand, Dr. Anjana Singh, the Head of Department, Nirmala College, and also the Principal Investigator. And congratulations, Madam, for this very innovative topic that you have chosen for your investigation. And I would also especially like to thank Dr. Shantani Banerjee from the Department of English, Amity University, and who was also the co-investigator in this project. So especially Shantani, because I thank Shantani also for your patience and your generosity, and not giving up on me in spite of my not answering your phone calls and delaying my, your WhatsApp messages, replying to your WhatsApp messages and so on. So thank you both of you, especially Dr. Anjana Singh and to Shantani Banerjee. I would really like to, put in my word for her. And yes, thank you so much, Dr. Bonani Chatterjee, the HOD of the PG Department of English, who has for the past, I would say, 1 or 2 years been involving me in translations, giving me assignments. And while working for her, I also discovered a lot of things which I will be able to share with you today. I would like to share my topic for today, that is reflections of ecofeminism in writings by tribal women of Jharkhand. And let me make it clear, I will not be focusing only on the Santhal women. I will be focusing on tribal writings from tribal women from 5 languages. I had tried to get a 6th language, but I'm very sorry I couldn't get appropriate poems from the whole tribal literature. So I will be giving you a little background about all the tribal languages that I will be dealing with today. So for today's presentation, I will be kind of dividing my entire paper into 2 parts. That is, the first portion will deal with an overview of Jharkhand, its tribal groups, and particularly its languages. I'll focus a little more upon the languages. And the second part of today's presentation, I will briefly introduce 9 tribal women writers one by one, and I will then read some of their English translations of the poems and will discuss some eco-feminist concerns in them. And then I will conclude after I discuss some very relevant critical comments on ecofeminism made by the eminent writer Vandana Tete. These comments have been included in her introduction to the first ever published anthology of poems by Jharkhand tribal women. And the title of the book is Kavi Man Jani Man. It is edited by Vandana Tete herself. It's a wonderful book, a wonderful resource material for me. And I have trimmed my original presentation a little bit in an effort to repeat what the previous speakers have already covered. So if I have time, I may add one more poet, one of my favorites, because I love her poems on the theme of migration. So I will be adding one more poet at the end. And I have not translated, I just translated the work in the morning today. I originally had not translated her work, so I had planned to give you the Hindi reading, but I think now I will be able to give you the English reading as well. So let me come to my paper. And now I will be sharing the slides. Supriya, I'll be sharing a few slides with you.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Please go on.
Yes. Can you see me? Oh, no, no, wait. I didn't share the slides. Wait, I'm a little. Yes. Start now. Okay, can you see the slide and can you see the screen?
Right. We can
Yes.
see your screen. We can see your slide.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to give you an overview of Jharkhand. Some of the speakers have already given you an overview, but I would like to give you a little more, add a little more to it. And we all know that Jharkhand has a state with a very rich forest resource, approximately 30% of forest cover, and out of this 30%, 20% are reserved forest, protected forest. And then we are aware that approximately 40% of the country's mineral resources for India are there in Jharkhand. We are the ones who are kind of, the country is dependent upon us for a large part of the iron, bauxite, copper, coal, mica, uranium, manganese, nickel, dolomite, graphite, and many more mineral resources of India are provided by Jharkhand. And numerous rivers arise from the Chota Nagpur Plateau region, and the entire Jharkhand has got abundant water resources. We really do not face the kind of water scarcity that many of the other states face, many of the other regions of India face. So we are very lucky in this matter. We have got abundant water resources, and those of us who have visited Ranchi surely know of the beautiful waterfalls all around, because Chota Nagpur Plateau is the area from where many of these rivers originate. And when you talk about the population of Jharkhand, approximately 27% of the population of Jharkhand are tribals, and they mostly live in forests and hills. And theirs is predominantly a forest-based economy. And Jharkhand has got abundant human resources. No need to tell you much about this, because we have all heard about how, Jharkhand has been providing human resources for road building all over what used to be called Nepal, but today we know as the Himalayan regions, and Assam, and even into Bhutan. Actually, the tribals of Jharkhand are supposed to be very hardy. And there are reports, I have read somewhere that even at zones with very low oxygen concentration, somehow the tribals of Jharkhand are able to perform very efficiently. So they are much in demand in the border road constructions. So you must have heard, even during the lockdown period, when thousands of Jharkhand laborers had been stranded on the Himalayas and had to be rescued by the Chief Minister of Jharkhand because of this, the human resources, the high quality human resources that we have. Besides that, when you talk about the new airport that was built in Bangalore, I know of a lot of Jharkhand laborers who had been employed at Bangalore. And you go down to Chennai, you go down to all the industrialized states, you will find human resources from Jharkhand. And it is a sad fact, but yes, also in the metro cities, you have a lot of these, I would call the unskilled laborers, especially the women who are working in the metro cities. So we have all of these, human resources, and Jharkhand has no dearth of human resources at all. So let's come to the second slide. The status of tribal languages in Jharkhand. When you look at Jharkhand, there are 32 tribal groups listed in the scheduled list. So there are 32 scheduled tribes in Jharkhand, and every tribe has got its own distinct language. We all know that there is this huge the Endangered Languages Program which is going on in the world, and this UNESCO Endangered Languages Program of the World has identified that there are 11 endangered languages in Jharkhand. 11 languages in Jharkhand are endangered, and out of the 11, one is a regional language, and the other 10 are tribal languages. And you could see it on my screen. one critically endangered language, that is the Birhor language, which could very soon become extinct. Definitely endangered, you have two languages, that is the Asur language and Malto, the vulnerable language, Ho, Khadiya, Koda, Kuduk, Mundari, Korwa, and Birjia. And then the status of tribal languages, and actually I'm talking about the academic support that we get. Only 5 languages are taught up to the postdoctoral degree, that is in the Ranchi University and maybe also in the newly formed Shama Prasad Mukherjee University. And few other state universities offer academic degrees, some in only 1 language, some in 2, and some in maybe 3 languages. But only Ranchi offers in all 5. And these languages, which are being taught in the universities, have got some sort of a written literature, and maybe a few more also have some literature. And because of the academic support, the corpus keeps increasing. But you see, out of the 35, only 5 of them received have got the academic support. So you see, the rest of them, the 27 of them, maybe 25 of them, because 2 or 3 more have started working on their written literatures. But more than about 25 of them, the bulk of the literature is in the oral forms. And what Nitisha Khalko presented day before yesterday, the oral literature, actually, I will not go into the percentages, but a large bulk of tribal literature still exists in the oral form. And what concerns me is a lot of these oral literatures will be extinct by the next generation, because the modern generation is into mobile phones and the internet and modern developmental whatever forms of entertainment that they have. So people are losing interest in their own orators, own oral forms. So I deeply appreciated what Nitisha Khalko had done, presenting the oral form. And I'm very happy that I'm able to complement it with the written literature today. And I would like to make a few disclosures that I told you that we have
Eva, we have lost your voice. We are not able to hear you anymore. If you could just see it on your end, what happened? Eva, if you are able to hear me, we are unable to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
now
ma'am.
we can hear you.
All right, let me go back to the screen then.
Yes, are you able to hear me now?
Right, we are able to hear
Yes.
you.
Okay, so the disclosures. I told you that there are 32 languages of Jharkhand, tribal languages, but I will be reading out only from 5 tribal languages, and I have referred only to literature which is available in the form of published writings by contemporary tribal writers. And most of the poems and stories are written in Hindi. Some are written in the tribal languages with pre-translations in Hindi. But the bulk of tribal literature still exists in the tribal languages, and I have not used any of the oral literatures. And all English translations which I use today have been done by me. And these are only the first draft because I did not have the time to polish to refine them. So, and I'm not even introducing the full poem. Most of the poems are only abstract of the poems. So I very highly recommend that you read the full poem from the books that, which I will be telling you about at the end. So I would not talk about the theory at all because we have had enough on the theories. I would like to come straight away to the first poet of today. And the first poet is Sushma Asur. Oh, what have I done with the introductions? Oh my, a whole collection. I had a whole page of introductions. I seem to have lost it. Okay. What have I done? All right. I think I will have to do it from my memory. Now, the first poem of today is Sushma Asur. She belongs to the Asur tribe, and she had to undergo a lot of struggles to reach where she is today. And she actually comes from the very hilly areas of Netherhat region, and she was barely able to complete her class 12 education. And we see that, you see, she came in contact with the with a journal called Akhra, and that is where she got received the inspiration to start writing. And then she started writing in Asuri language, and she writes in the Asuri language, and she published a book, I think, in 2010, and that is the first ever um, Asuri text for Asuri language. So she is actually an innovator, and she now writes as well as translates her own poem. And the poem that I have with us today is just excerpts. The hill that was home has vanished. Pahad ka ghar khatam ho gaya. The hill is crying. The river is sobbing. All the springs of Jharkhand are wailing. The earth and the hills are all lamenting. All tribes are weeping. No water in the springs. No flowers and fruits in the hills. The tiger, monkey, bear, fox, snake, elephant, rabbit, birds, there is no place for them. The hill that was home has vanished. And when no language is left, how do we hold a festival of songs? We were the first smelters of iron. Now companies use the same iron to plunder the earth, bleeding her, killing her, using the very metal. All Asur tribes are weeping. I want you to notice that when she talks about the weeping and the crying, you see, she mentions the hill, the river, the spring, the earth, the us.
Eva ma'am, we would request you to please stop playing this PPT and getting live with us on without this PPT so that we
Okay.
are able to hear you and
Oh,
see you.
you are unable to hear you.
If in between we tend to lose you quite often, so it would
Okay.
be perfectly well if you don't open your PPT. We'll share it later, and
Okay.
we can just have you as a speaker and extempore. Please
All
switch on
right.
your video. Please switch on.
Okay. Can you see me now? Supriya?
There is a option of video. Just click on that.
Yes, I know. I can see the option, but somehow it's not taking my this thing. Supriya, come here. I'm just stop share. Yes, now it's okay.
Right.
Can you see me
Please
now?
don't share PPT, and it would be fine.
Okay. For all the participants, I have got all the PPTs. I will give it to the organizer, and they can share it with you later on.
We'll
All right. So that was the first poem, and you notice that you have the what do you get? The earth belonging to the biological, the earth and it's all the biological systems. The earth and all its biological systems are one huge single entity. That is, you see, the environmental feminism, the traditional that you talk about over here. I think the GAIA, I think you pronounce it as a Gaia hypothesis, where the humans, the rivers, and all natural objects all bound together in the one and same design. And you have the lamentations for environmental degradation. the environmental justice that the previous speakers were talking about, and the no home for animals, no home for birds, the loss of culture, the loss of language. You see the mention over here. How do we hold the festival of songs when there is no language left? And there is also the mention of the capitalist, the consumerist driven plunder of the earth. When you see, she talks about the mining of natural resources, killing and bleeding the earth. I would like to add over here that, you see, the Asur people were the first smelters of iron in Chota Nagpur Plateau. And they are the ones who who found the iron ore and smelted and created iron. But now the iron companies have come in and they have started plundering the earth. And they have started, using the very iron to now bleed the earth and to kill her. The second poem, again by Sushma Asur, is, I will read it out. How many days? Kitne din? How many days will money last, earned from selling land? How much longer will you split stones? Why are you smashing up fields of granite? You are destroying the intestines of your own stomach, annihilating yourselves. Tomorrow, not a thing will be left, not even your language to lament in. On whose shoulder will you rest your head and cry? The hills will be prostrate, stretched out in the cities, bound in coal tar, being crushed every minute by numerous vehicles of the latest fancy models. This is quite a long poem. I have just chosen 2 short stanzas. And you see in this poem, Sushma Asur talks about the mining activity, the granite, the stone quarries all over Jharkhand, especially Jharkhand has got a very rich granite stock. And we all know that the Pakur region, the granite of Pakur region is the one specified in the construction of dams. So we have got a very high quality granite present here, which is now the target of all kinds of mining activity. And these stones usually are found in the hilly regions of Jharkhand. And that is why what she talks about at the end of the poem. The stones which are now bound in coal tar and are now stretched out on the roads. And she says, whom will you rest your head upon to cry? And there is also it's a very interesting, because the hill is a symbol of worship. I don't know about the Asur tribe, because that is, the Asuri language is a Dravidian language. But my language, Santali, Mundari, you have the Ho, Khadiya, these are all the Austric languages, the Mundari group of languages, where the hill is called the Buru. And we all know the Marang Buru, the deity, the spirit of the hill, that is worshipped. But once all the stones and all the hills are crushed and they are stretched out upon the road, whom do we worship? Whom do we cry out to? Whom will the people, rest their head? On whose bosom will they rest their heads and cry? So this is the emotional attachment of the writer Sushma Asur with the hills all around her. And this is a beautiful poem. I have chosen another poem by Sushma Asur, where the heading is How Many Days? No, I'm sorry, I've already read out how many days. The third one is, we will surely survive like the unswerving plateau. Hum zarur jiyenge hi pathar ki tarah nidar. O ancestors of the earth, O ancestors of the sky, mothers and fathers, O Asur patriarchs and matriarchs, the forest was responsible for feeding you. The fields were accountable for paying you for your labor. This plateau extended from here to there was your school. The hills and springs guided you in your paths. But when the company arrives, dham, dham, And when the Sarkar turns our life to hell, whom do we call out to? Upon whose bosom do we seek refuge? We will learn to speak like you. We will learn to dance like you. We will hunt just like you, all those animals who are digging up our Asur homes, those who are enticing all our springs, who are addicted to devouring the earth and the humans. We will surely survive just like you, like the plateau, assured and unswerving, in this Asur land founded by you. I would like to tell you that there are very beautiful portions which I had to leave out, where she talks about how the Asur people have forgotten their language, they have forgotten the chants, they have forgotten the language uh, by which they used to address their deities. And so now they are worried. And in this poem, she talks about, that's the loss of culture, the loss of tradition, the loss of language. And there is also the concern for the forests, the fields. She addresses the forests and the fields as the nurturer and the protector, the hills as the guardians of the Asur people. And at the end of the poem, there we find what Dr. Yahya Ibrahim had mentioned as the political action, the transformative feminism. She calls for action, the retaliation for the protection of the habitat. You see, we will hunt just like you. We will hunt those animals who are digging up our Asur homes. So this call, this what the academicians would refer to as the transformative feminism, or the political action, would very often be defined as Naxalism or anti-state activities. So that is what Sushma Asur has called for. The next poem I would like to introduce today is Grace Kujur. Grace Kujur belongs to the Urao tribe. You see, Sushma Asur was from the Asuri tribe, and that is the definitely endangered language. Now we come to Grace Kujur, which is a vulnerable language. And Grace Kujur is a highly educated lady. She worked in the All India Radio, and she was in the director and the All India radio station, the Ranchi, Bhagalpur, Patna, and also at New Delhi. And she also has written a number of radio plays and skits. And though her poems have not been published as separately, but her poems have been found in many anthologies. She used to publish in many journals and locals. And so she has got a collection of over 40 poems, and she writes beautiful poems, and she writes in Hindi. The first poem, I have chosen 3 poems from Grace Kujur too. And the first poem is Once More a Jani Shikar. Ek aur Jani Shikar. Where is that futkal tree where I would climb to pluck sag, and I would sing for you the song of Fagwa? Where is the sweet smell of mahua and dori, of the gular and the keund? Where is the music of the bamboos lost? I don't know where the perfume of Sandhana is lost now. Who has punched holes in the sakwa tree? How will I stitch its leaves? How will I sew donas and pattals? Even datun twigs now grow twisted. And if even now the fingers of your hands tremble, then you should know that I once again will become Signi Dai. I will bind my forehead with my scarf. And once again the knot of my betra will tighten. And once again in Jharkhand, you will witness a forceful Jani Shikar. Now, when you come to this poem, the heading of the poem, Jani Shikar. What is Jani Shikar? Jani means woman. Shikar means hunt. We all know that in the tribal communities, you have the traditional hunt. The community, the entire community goes to hunt all together once in a year. All right, we call it the Sindra in the Santhali and the Mundari languages. So she refers to this shikar. And it's not only the men, sometimes the women make their own troops and they go out on their own hunts. So this is a poem where the writer, Grace Kujur, is referring to the social injustices, that is the food security, the threat to food security of the tribal people because of the loss of habitat. And she talks specifically about the futkal, the disappearing futkal trees, the disappearing mahua trees, the cane trees which provide fruit and oil, the sandana. Those of you who live in Ranchi, we all know that sandana. Now is the season for sandana. Sandana is the bamboo shoots, and we make bamboo pickles, and we also have the curry. This is an important source of sustenance. The tribals dry up the sandana and use it for food throughout the year. And you see, the nature which is a nurturer. Now the trees are being cut down and the trees are disappearing. And she expresses a concern about the food security, unable to feed her family. And you also have the mention of the dori and the mahua, the two oils which are used in medicinal herbs. And the woman as a caregiver, the woman with her the ethnic biodiversity and the knowledge that she has of the Jharkhand forest. And the medicinal tree is also disappearing. She unable to access the oils of the dori and the mahua. And then she also talks about the dona, the patal, the leaf plates, the leaf cups, and the twigs, which the tribals use as toothbrushes, all of them disappearing from the forests. She is kind of at a loss how she would go about her daily, how she would be able to support her family. And you have the at the very end, actually I have left out a lot of portions. This poem is actually in the form of an address, a woman addressing her partner, her man, and telling the man where has everything disappeared. And she goes on to talk about that this poem is actually 6 pages long, and she goes on to talk about everything disappearing, and she wonders why her man is quiet, why he does not do anything about it. And she tries to encourage him to speak out and to take some action about it, to resist what is happening to their habitat. And at the end, I have just put in the last stanza where she says, if your hands tremble even now, then she is willing to become Signi Dai. The woman who had protected the Rohtasgarh fort against the attacks of Sher Shah Suri. When the men were all drunk, the women had dressed up as men. They had tied up their heads in a scarf. They had betra means tying. It's tying up a baby in a cloth and put it in securing it to your back. So securing your baby to your back. So she says, I'm going to tighten my betra again. I shall put my scarf around my head, and I shall once again become Signidai if you do not take a stand. And this, what again Dr. Yahya Khan had talked about, the political action. The Jani Shikar, the women will go out on the hunt if the men are not going to do anything about it. And then she seeks inspiration from Signi Dai. The next poem is The Wait, Pratiksha. Why are you so quiet, Sangi? Why don't you say something? In spite of the fire burning latent in the deepest coal inside the earth under your feet, why is your body so cold? The lengths of copper wires trailing in the vast plains of Jharkhand. Does not the water of this iron-rich land run in your veins? In spite of drinking it, you are blown off with the slightest wind. Assam, Bhutan, brick kilns, and to cities, beneath the milky light of the thermal powers and the magical halo of Jadugoda, you carry a dim Karanj oil lamp. In what darkness of your mind are you wandering around, Sangi? Into the hands of which masterminds have you mortgaged the equation of life in sal forests without the Jal, Jungle, and Jameen, Sangi? peeping out of the tree hollows, even and are waiting for your answer, Sangi. I still remain standing like a lone sal tree. I still remain standing here like a lone sal tree, standing on a rock, which quietly continues to draw its share of water. This poem, Pratiksha, the wait, once again, the woman addressing her partner, the waiting for him to take action. And the word Sangi means partner, mate. It could also be a lover. So the woman over here, kind of the woman steadfast like the Mother Earth, the woman and the earth, both patient, steadfast, standing by her mate, the human, the man in this case. And she talks about all the mineral resources. It's a beautiful poem, you see. And she talks about the mineral resources. She mentions the coal, the copper, the iron. And in spite of the iron-rich waters, why does her man not say anything? Why does he not feel the anger in his blood? Why is he so easily blown away to work as a laborer to Bhutan, to Assam, tea gardens, the brick kilns? And she also talks about the thermal powers of Jharkhand. And she talks about the magical light of Jadugora. We all know that the uranium mines of Jadugora. And in spite of all of these lights, why is her mate, her Sangi, still carrying around the Karanj oil lamp? Why does he not wish to upgrade himself? And she says, whom have you mortgaged all our land to, all our Jal Jungle Jameen to? What kind of a life can we have? Our life in a sal forest without the Jal Jungle and Jameen? So she questions him. You see, the woman does not have the right over land, ancestral land. It's the man who controls it. And it is he who has mortgaged it to the capitalist forces, the corporates. And so she questions him. And she also tells him that even the parrots in the forest, sal forest, are now inquiring. They were scared, unsure about the existence. So it is the environmental injustice. And you have, she says at the end, Sangi, I still remain standing here. And I remain standing like the sole sal tree. And my share of water I will draw, and I will continue to sustain. So she is assuring him of her support, but she wants him to step forward and to kind of react, to kind of to protect her world. And the third poem, again from Grace Kujur, Fire, Aag. This is a different kind of a poem. In the form of compassionate appointment, Etwarya Orion does not want to serve water to the office babus or bring them tea, nor does she want to carry files for officers. On the office lawns, her head bowed and veiled, she does not want to plant green doob grass, nor does she want a job layoff. And that is why Etwarya Orion drives the power shovel. I'm sorry. And that is why Etwarya Orion drives the power shovel, wearing a pant, shirt, and cap. In the open cast mines, at every blast with alacrity, she handles the steering wheel of the shovel, scoops up tons of coal, and feeds the in-pit crusher. Etwarya cannot hear the tinkle of her own bangles, cannot fix the bindi in its place. Her forehead is damp with sweat. She watches the small pieces of coal emerging from the in-pit, carried on the conveyor belt, and reflects, once she too was whole. But she also knows that it is the small pieces that will burn quicker. Now, like I said, this is a different kind of a poem. And here you have, you see, the woman, Etwarya Orion, seeking for her own identity. And she is portrayed over here, breaking away from the stereotypical traditional role of a water server, a servant, the bearer of files, the garden tender. Instead, she chooses a masculine role of a driver, and not even an ordinary driver, the driver of a power shovel working in a pit, carrying coal. So, carrying coal on a shovel. So you also have her questioning, you have the conflict within her, the talk about bangles and the bindis, taking on a masculine role, yet trying to keep her feminine identity intact. So this is actually, this is the breaking away from the stereotypical patriarchal model which a man has created for a woman. This is beautiful. And because I like Grace Mujur very much, I've chosen another poem from her that is Flowing Against the Current. Dhar ke Viprit. Why does it so happen that in the fields of the village Kaki, nobody pulls a plow, and from the fractured roof of her house on rainy days, the water trickles in, jhar, jhar, jhar. But yesterday, it rained vigorously, a strong stream contrary in direction to the flow of waters in rivers and drains, up to her courtyard. No right to climb the roof. In spite of knowing this, Kaki climbs up to patch the roof. Yesterday, we must have heard Dr. Amita Kumari mention the taboos on women. The taboos only for women, not for men. And she also mentioned how a widow has a tough time because there is a taboo upon her plowing her fields, taboo upon her, the thatched roof. In fact, Nitisha had also discussed this, Nitisha Khalko in her lecture, the taboos upon women. And it's beautiful. Actually, Amita had discussed a lot about how the punishment which was meted out to a woman who had in fact flouted one of these taboos. And this poem is about breaking the taboos, breaking the stereotypical, the patriarchal social structures, which the social system has imposed upon a lady. And you see, the first one is about the fields of the Kaki. The men are wicked enough not to help her out with the plowing. So she is handicapped. She cannot grow her own rice. And then you have the second stanza where it shows breaking away the leaking roof, and she does not matter. In spite of knowing it, she climbs up on the roof and she repairs it. And now I would like to come to the third poet, Vandana Tete. She is she is a kind of a lady who stands out. And I'm so sorry I do not have the write-up. It's in my computer, but I don't want to waste time spending it. She is a poet, a translator, and she is a publisher. She has been editor to various magazines. She is a mentor, and she is right now the editor of the Accra Journal and many other journals. And she is a mentor, and she is actually, encouraging. And she is the person who has brought forward Sushma Asur. She is instrumental in documenting and also helping to create new tribal literature. So Vandana Tete, the granddaughter of the legendary Pyara Kerketa. So we all know of Pyara Kerketa. She is the third generation of that family. And her mother, Rose Kerketa, is also a poet, but unfortunately, I have not been able to incorporate any poems from Dr. Rose Kerketa's collections. So the first poem that I take is, she writes in Hindi, and she also translates many of the poetry for other writers from other tribal languages as well. And she's been an immense help for me for this paper presentation. And it is from her anthology that I have taken, I think, 90% of the poems today. So the first poem is, Who Are You? Tum Kaun Ho? You are burnt like Roop Kunwar. Society murders you when you dare taste love. Using the hot cage of tradition, your eyes are blinded. And when your tongue speaks out, you are branded characterless. When you revolt against this biased judgment, when will you revolt against this biased judgment? How long will you remain Roop Kunwar? How long will you suffer their diktat that you be a royal courtesan? And the animal hunger of tradition, for how long and will you submit your bleeding body? If you are Sita, Ahilya, Draupadi, and Rup Kuvar, then you also are Signi, Kaili, Phulo, Jano, Maki. You are Soni, Sori as well. You are human, being besides being many other things. This is another very interesting poem. You remember the mention of Soni Sori by Nitisha Khalkhu in her lecture? You see, this is a poem where you have the male traditional subjugation of women, the men dictating that a woman does not have a right to choose whom she loves. The woman, under the under the pretext of traditional rules, is shut up, killed even, and then see, she's shut up in the cage of tradition. And there is, why does a woman accept being Rup Kumar? And how long will she accept being the royal courtesan, fulfilling the sexual desires of the males? How long will she submit her bleeding body? And you have the writer, Vandana Tete, invoking Signi Dai, Kaili, Phulo Jhano, Maki Munda, all the female icons of the tribal, different tribes. And she also says, you are the Soni Sori, fight back, do not accept. So over here you have, when you come to Soni Sori, you also have the subjugation of the earth as well as the subjugation of the woman. So they are both interconnected, and it's beautifully presented in this poem. I'm just hurrying through a little bit. The second poem by Vandana Tete, The River of Poems. The River of Poems, the River of Poems, Kavitao Wali Nadi. The river of poems has begun to dry up. The hill of music is bare. The mines of Hindalco have quarried the fields of Jutangi. Ponds have dried up. Clouds avoid meeting with the hills. And the air traveling through the forest has forgotten to hum and soothe. It only whispers. I can't fathom what it says, but the heart sinks into a cavernous pit of doubts. And the longing to submerge in the river of poetry under rifle butts and boots keeps groaning day and night. You have all of them. The mining activities, the mention of Hindalco, the bauxite mines, the degradation of the rivers, the hills, air and cloud. You have the brute force for capitalist advancement. You have the mention of militarization in the mineral-rich areas of Jharkhand. See, under the butts, rifle butts and boots, under the rifle butts and boots, and this woman yearning, looking for the river of poems, looking for the serenity, the quietness of her own lands, and not able to find it. The third poem the next poem is from another writer, that is Pyari Tutti. Pyari Tutti belongs to the Munda tribe, and she is the wife of the, she is the wife of a very well-known, a Munda writer. And let me just, I have to mention his name. I simply cannot do without it. Dulai Chandra Munda. So she is the wife of the very famous Dulai Chandra Munda, a very eminent Mundari poet. And she actually was married when she was only in class 10th, didn't even complete her education. But after her husband's death and after she got a compensatory job, she continued with her education and she completed her PG and her B.Ed, and she managed to educate all her children. So while she was working, she had a few writings which she published here and there. But after retirement, she took up writing seriously, and she's provided a corpus of writings which are now available for us. And I've chosen only one poem, and the poem is Environment, Paryavaran. Beautiful poem. O hill deity, O mother river, O jungle king, the hills are crushed, the river has dried up, the jungle has been cut down. Whom shall I worship? Where shall I quench my thirst? Whom shall I serve? I was sheltered by the forest, played in the stream of the river, was nurtured by fruits of the forest. The direction of the wind has changed. The flow of the river has been stemmed. The jungle has become desolate. I have been orphaned. I have become thirsty. I have been left hungry. You have once again the spirit of the universe, the earth, and the humans all in the same one design, the Gaia philosophy. And the Adi Dharam, you see, the loss of the hill deity, the traditional worship. She tries to invoke the hill deity, the Marangburu. It's gone. The Mother Earth, the Jungle King, all of them gone. And she also touches upon food security. The lost fruits no longer sustain her, and the water security, the rivers depleted, tampered with, and the feeling of being orphaned. I would now like to rush to the next poem, that is by Yashoda Murmu. Yashoda Murmu, a Santhal poet from the Singhbhum region, I think the Chapasachi Singhbhum region, and the first she is employed in the banking services. She's done her MA in Santhali, and she is now settled in Kolkata. But she continues to write in Santhali, and she translates her own works into Hindi. The first poem I have chosen is "Whither is the Woman in Liberated India?" स्वाधीन भारत में कहाँ है नारी का स्थान? This is a long poem, just one short excerpt. An endless saga which does not cease here, yet again witnessed in Birbhum of Bengal. Judged by Punch, and Sunita Murmu is stripped naked, and arises yet again the question in the mind, whither is woman liberated in India? Now, this is an interesting poem where we have what Amita had mentioned, the patriarchal political systems, nearly all men, and judging that a woman needs to be punished. And in this case, this was a true incident where Sunita Murmu, she was stripped naked, she was beaten, she was brutalized, and then she was also raped. Rape as a part of punishing women. That is, normalizing the violence against women under the garb of, keeping the woman under control, keeping like the earth should be kept control of under man. Similarly, the male counterpart controlling a woman. And there is another poem by Yashoda Murmu, but I will not read it out because this is already, the issues have already been dealt by the other poets. And I would now like to go over to the next poem, that is Ujjwala Jyoti Tiga. Now, Ujjwala Jyoti Tiga shifted to Delhi as a child, and she was educated and brought up in Delhi, and she also worked in Delhi. And now, after she has written quite a lot of poems, and she writes very deeply about issues of Jharkhand, though she stays in Delhi. And this is the poem which I have chosen. I'll read one of her poems, that is, "The band of hunters now arrive. Shikari dal ab aate hain." The band of hunters, they now arrive disguised as rabbits to the jungles and invited to their gatherings the lions, bears, and elephants living there, and brainwashed them, coached them, coaxed them that just like others, development was their birthright too. In the name of the new model of development, they made false promises that how the old and nondescript jungles may also receive a facelift. Lying in a corner, that lonely neglected forest too may become a world-class national park, where there will be all glamorous world-class facilities and be patronized by foreign tourists, and how sitting at home will be fattened numerous generations of the lion, the bear, and the elephant. So this is something happening all over Jharkhand. You have the environmental degradation and the capitalist, the corporate forces coming into tribal regions, with their false promises, promising the sky to the tribal people who are ultimately cheated and left empty-handed. And you have the environmental degradation, and you have, the commercialization of resources, commercialization of the forest resources, developing it into a national park, and so on. And then you have the deception just for the economic gains of a few. The stakeholders are left empty-handed, and you'd have the subjugation of the biodiversity, the lion, the bear, and the tiger. It could also be human. You see, all of them being cheated by the corporates. And there is another poem where she talks about, I will just give you the gist of it. The jungle will return as a cheetah. Jungle cheetah ban lautega, where she again calls for action, a retaliation. And it is actually, she does not call for action from the humans. It is the nature retaliating. How long will the nature cry that one day the tears are going to turn into the lava and the entire forest is going to be burnt down? The humans are going to be scorched, and what we know as greenery will all end up as deserts someday. And now one of my favorite poets, that is Jacinta Kerketa. And I have to read out her poem. The mystery of innumerable bamboos sprouting on hills. Pahadon par uga, asankhya bason ka rahasya. Now, Jacinta Kerketa is a firebrand, outspoken writer. She has done her graduation in mass communication. She is a journalist, a poet, a motivator, and a very powerful speaker. And the poem is, I was sleeping in Kurwa when abruptly the earth started trembling. I saw a chunk of land caught in the jaws of a JCB machine along with my piece of land. Along with my piece of land, I myself was dangling from the machine, and then I experienced the agony of being uprooted along with one's land. I saw the bodies of my ancestors, how they were being chopped up into little pieces, and every one of these pieces was auctioned for crores. The crowd of buyers and a town had sprung up below. And I felt as if every limb of my body was butchered and sold off. My eyes, my heart, my all. I saw from atop the hills the future of my generations to come, selling bamboos in the marketplace. At that instant, I was free from the machine's grip. I picked up a bamboo. This time, these bamboos will not visit the market. Bamboo in the jungle will now be shaped into bows and arrows for every hand. And then, for the first time, I understood the mystery of innumerable bamboos growing on hills, irrigated by the blood of my ancestors. You see, this is a poem where we have the environmental injustice. I will not go into it. You have the uprooting of tribals, the dislocation, the dispossession, very often forceful dispossession, forced upon them without their consent, the social injustices, the commercial sale of land. And Jacinta Kerketa here, she identifies with her land, and when the land is broken up into pieces and sold off, it is as if her own self, her own body and soul are being cut up, butchered, and being sold off. And at the end, there is the political action, and you have bamboos taking the shape of bows and arrows, every hand picking up one and fighting back, fighting for the land, fighting for the rights, fighting for their livelihood. And again, what I say, the social justice, the tribals looking for social justice, that is what Jacinta Kerketa looks for, and which is very often defined as action against the state and defined as Naxalism by the state. So there is another poem which I will not read out. You will get it on your PPT. Why this discrimination, Kaisa Bhed, where Jacinta Kerketa talks about the abuse that her mother had suffered. The mother, the writer's mother had gone out to the market and purchased clothes for the daughter before purchasing for her son. And the father actually beat up the mother. And it's beautiful. The oppressive patriarchal control, the hierarchical thinking, where you have the men, put the men above women, above women. You have the vertical domination, and then you have the boy, the son over the daughter. And this abuse against normalized, where you have the image of neighbors peeping through windows, nobody intervening, and the daughter left to collect her broken mother and to collect the shattered pieces of the class and trying to kind of bring it all together. And she, at the end, she also talks about the degrading social values. She does not blame the tribal society, but she talks about the influences coming in from some other society from outside. And yes, okay, I forgot. Jacinta Kerketa belongs to the Ural tribe. And we have the anguish of forests, the rivers, hills of the lonely old earth, written by Nirmala Putul, another one of my very famous, very favorite poets. And in this poem, she talks. She is a Santhal lady. She is from Santhal Parganas, another firebrand writer who has been recognized, whose poems have been translated to Hindi, and they are very popular. She is overall. She is found on the internet. Her poems are on the internet, and she is one of the better known poets from the tribal groups. Jacinta Kerketa as well as Nirmala Putul, two women poets who are better known. And this poem I will not read out, but she talks about, the shrieking of trees when the axe is cut down, the leaves are trembling, calling out for help. And she asks, do you not feel anything when you witness it? When you hear a large tree crashing down, thump upon the ground, do you not feel anything in your heart? And then she talks about, have you heard the river weeping with its mouth, with its mouth covered? And when you wash your clothes on this ghat, do you even notice that on the other ghat somebody is drinking water? Maybe somebody is worshipping a deity, pouring out water. Are you so insensitive? You're washing your animals over here when there is a worship service going on the other bank. And then she talks about, have you perceived how a hill trembles when you blast a hill? It seems as if the hill is sitting there strikily unmoving, but actually the entire hill, the bosom of the earth, the bosom of the hill is shaken because pieces of stones are wrecked and thrown all around. And she says, have you ever heard in the afternoon sun when the hammer breaks the stones are screaming? And she says, even the wind, it seems to be spewing blood. And have you ever for a minute stopped to speak to the old Mother Earth? Have you discussed her pain with her? Do you know what the Mother Earth is has to undergo? Have you no time? Have taken a little bit out of your busy schedule to talk to your Mother Earth? If you have not, she says, I have doubts that you are a human at all. She has doubts that the person reading this poem is a woman at all. And at the very end, by the poet Nirmala Putul, again, a woman of the hills. I will not read out the poem because it's quite a long poem. And this is actually a poem in celebration of a woman of the hills. The woman who, it's a description of how she goes to the hills and she carries down a load of dried wood. She goes to the forest, she goes to the market, sells it. She earns money, buys food, and feeds her children and her family. And then there is the description of, once again, the betra, a woman tied up on her back. The child tied on her back. And she, with the child on her back, participates in the plantation activity and all kinds of, the economic activity, just for the pleasure of seeing the swaying crops upon her field, for the food security, struggling for the food security of her family. And then when it is time, she goes on the hills, she breaks the trees, she breaks the stones, she sells the stones. On time, she also, breaks away from constraints and obstructions, just like the hills. She breaks away from traditions and she weaves mats, she weaves brooms, all the goods that are needed for her household. She creates herself. She's a creator. She gives shape to everything that she needs. She is a creator, a nurturer. So this is a poem which actually celebrates a woman. And at the end, she tucks a flower in her knot, and she's like somebody's sweetheart. She's also a sweetheart. She gives love. And she chases around goats, dances around, she decorates the earth with her beauty, and she is like the 100 virgin dreams. She gives hope to her society, her children, her menfolk. And it's like the earth, in spite of everything, the earth continues to give hope. We have faith, we know that the earth will always be there for us. So this is a poem of celebration. And like I said, oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Vandana Kirketa belongs to the Khadia tribe. And now, like I said, I have one more poem by Francisca Kujur, and I would like to add her because I think you will be interested, because Francisca Kujur is a professor, assistant professor in the Department of History in Giridih College. She belongs to the Oraon tribe, and she had a lot of struggles, and she had to actually labor, had to work in order to support her own education. And she, for a long time, was on a temporary basis, she was as a teacher, as a lecturer at Paramveer Albert Eka Memorial College of Chainpur. Later, she was selected for the government service, and she's joined the Giridih College. And she writes beautifully, and she has a knack for language. And I love her poems on migration. She's written on many issues, but I especially love her poems on the issue of migration. But here I'm talking about the Daughter of the Hills, where once again she celebrates girl, the child, the woman, and she talks about the child carefree. She actually does not talk about a woman. She's talking about a girl who carefree takes care of her little younger siblings, and she has again the betra, her baby brother, the sibling tied on her back. She goes up on the hills, and she at the same time has the cattle with her. So she has taking minding her baby sibling, and at the same time also grazing the cattle, and in also picking up wood and little bits from the mahua, the fruits, the flowers and tube, whatever she can collect from the forest. And when she comes down from the hills, then she goes to the market and she sells whatever she has collected to earn a little bit of money. So remember, when you go to the marketplace and you find these little small girls selling off their produce or whatever they have foraged from the forest, foraging from the forest and selling and earning a little bit of money in order to contribute to the family economy, right? As a child, the Adivasi girl learns from her childhood. And so this is a beautiful poem, and also a celebration where you have she plays with the mud houses in the rivers, and now instead of a rice, she winnows the sand, and there's laughter, there is, she cuddles her brother close, and she makes him sleep, sings to him. She's the daughter of the hills, and she mimics the koel's call. She sucks the sweet nectar of the mango flowers, and so on. And you see, she travels to the nearest town, jostled, stuffed into trains or maybe buses. She kind of faces the abuse in the bus just for that little bit of money, the rupees and the few paise. She's the daughter of the hills. She's willing to brave all that to earn a little bit of sustenance for her family. And even, you have the end of what do you call it? She undergoes the cold winters, the summers, the pains, and everything that she undergoes, she shares only with the trees around her, because she perceives the trees around her as her closest friends, as her closest kinsmen. So it is nature who is her closest companion, and that is all. And I would like to now come to the last part of my lecture, and I will just read out as quickly as possible from what Vandana Tete, like I told you, she has written the foreword. I have not given you the heading is "Kyunki Adivasi Striyan hi Peeth par Bhavishya ko betrati hai," and she kind of, this is, I know I have just overstepped my time by 13 minutes, but please bear me patiently. And she says, she writes in the introduction, we need to take into consideration that the foundation of Adivasi women's world is on a different plane. It is erected on the philosophy of tribalism, that is Adivasiyat, whose basic nature is egalitarian, where there exists no discrimination created by man or power, other than the discrimination designed by nature. There are a few restrictions in the Adivasi society, but Adivasi women are never imprisoned by any feudal brutalities or force of any religious magniloquence. There exists no male dominance in the tribal society, and as a result, there is no feminism as well. If Adivasi women are resorting to writing about harassment or exploitation by their men, then it is because of a malady by the name of development or civilization. Before any contact with civilization, there was no such concept such as male dominance to be found in the Adivasi social arrangements. This book is a necessary undertaking to bring to fore the feelings and anguish, concerns, aesthetic sense, and physical world of the Adivasi woman, so that the society and literature, which calls itself mainstream, may understand the writings by tribal women as an indistinguishable part of her very existence, which is a collective concern, not only for women, but a collective concern for her world, not her world, which involves only herself, her husband, and her children, and her human family, but also her world, which involves the trees, the hills, the rivers, and all the natural entities all around her, which she considers as her own kinsmen. The second passage which I'll read out is, Pahadi Nadi ki tarah unka lekhan hai. She comments upon the writings of the tribal women. Restless like the rivulet from the hills, blessed like the lake, strong stoic nucleus of the house, or akin to the economic, cultural, nutritionally valuable mahua. She is the backbone of her community. Her writings, just like her, with no twists, no turns or camouflages, simple and straightforward, as from her fields and courtyards, hills and forests, she forages, spreads out, and converses and shares. The third passage which I would like to read out is, the question is, whose development and in what manner? Which worldview? A cultural value system based on aesthetics of hatred, intolerance, discrimination, and plunder, or a cultural value system which favors human dignity? This is a curious fact that the earth and woman both are divided on the basis of color, race, religion, gender, and caste by that Indian society and literature which calls itself mainstream. And it professes to teaching humanity to the egalitarian Adivasi society. The fourth passage which I would like to read out is, but the circle of her concern is the Adivasi world. The concerns which are about all changes, complications, and problems taking place in the society. She knows that the impact and assault of external influences is not borne only by the society, but that children and women are its first victims, because it is always the Adivasi woman who cherished and carried the weight of the future on their backs. So I have really overstepped my time limit, and I'm so thankful to all of you for being so patient with me, and for having listened to me so patiently, and for not having tried to stop me in the middle. I will not conclude. I will not insult the writers. I will not insult Vandana Teti. I will not insult all the writers from the 5 tribal languages, the tribal languages which I chose here. That is Khadiya, Kuduk, Mundari, Asuri, and Santali, the 5 tribal language writers. And I encourage all of you to please to read the whole poems. I have just given you excerpts, and these are, these are the books. These are absolutely wonderful books which I have been referring to. So I would encourage all of the participants to kindly read. And it's amazing because many of these writers, with the powerful writers, have been writing in Hindi and have been published for a very long time. But why none of the syllabuses in Jharkhand, which have incorporated writings from translations from Punjabi, from Marathi, from Tamil, from Bengali, from all the languages in India have not incorporated the translations by tribal writers. And these are concerns about the Jharkhand people. They would very much, we have in fact, even for the intermediate, when it came to indigenous writings, we have a writer Bama from the first world of America, but we did not incorporate an indigenous piece, writing from, we did not have an indigenous writing from the Jharkhand writers. So that is it, the kind of neglect that the tribal writers have been facing. So I have been wanting to, I've been looking for a platform like this. And thank you so much to Nirmala College. And incidentally, the principal of Nirmala College, Dr. Sister Jyoti Kispota herself belongs to the Urao tribe. And I'm so thankful to her. I'm so thankful to the Amity University. And maybe you could take the leadership role in kind of being an example to the rest of the universities within Jharkhand to take up studies on such disciplines, the tribal writers and the multidiscipline. Yes, and yes, I would like to conclude now and thank you. Over to you. Thank you. Is it
Could you
okay?
please mute that one, Shantini? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Eva, ma'am. That was simply wonderful. You know, this idea of the entire UGC project was about having collaborative researches. And when we were actually giving up this proposal for Shantani coming from humanities background and I coming from a social science background, so we both of us decided, let's collaborate. And but we were actually looking for common grounds that would, or common topics that would bring us together, and we would give a proposal. And now when we have moved on with the project for 1 year now, I can understand why a kind of collaborative research is necessary. We in social sciences are so stuck up with the theory and with the explanations that survives around the theory that we tend to miss the inner sentiments, inner essence that are so clearly visible in these humanitical or humanities pieces, the poetry, the songs. When we talk about oral literature and orature, orature is the word that Vandana Tete herself has coined for oral literature. So thankfully, I am grateful that we have three common tribal female poetess as our favorites. First being Vandana Tete, another being Jacinta Karketta, and the third being Nirmala Putul. So these three are also my favorites, especially the firebrand Jacinta. And I'll tell you to the audience who are watching this entire lecture series from across the India, that these three women are not women who are localized, regionalized women. Adding some more points to that, Vandana Tete has even last month been invited to Harvard for her reading her poetry. Jacinta Karketta, when the corona started, was stuck in France because she was there giving her, she was invited by many universities across Europe, and she is an internationally exposed poetess. She has very, very, very humble beginnings. She is still trying to do a lot of things to make her both ends meet, and yet she is internationally exposed to a large extent. Same about Nirmala Putul. So when you read these poets, and when we are talking about oral literature, oral traditions, and oral histories, then these are this. These are what we are talking about. These are the expositions and sentiments. And why this lens of ecofeminism? From the very first day when we have started theorizing this ecofeminism as a concept, why this lens? Why not any other lens? You can see how they relate to it. When Eva ma'am was reading the poetic pieces, when they says, when Jacinta says, you are not just you, that JCB machine took up a piece of land, and yes, it was my ancestors you were selling for crores, I was touched. What kind of expression is this? I would thank Eva ma'am for three things. First, for choosing these beautiful pieces of poetry, it could have been any other thing, but her selection is fantastic. Fantastic. You selected wonderful, wonderful pieces written by these poetesses, these poets. And how thought provoking the entire idea is, that you relate to your nature so deep. It's not just that you are devoid of their livelihood, you're devoid of your sentiments, and these sentiments you can understand in literature. So of course, this is looking at the softer aspect of it, and this has provoked a series of questions, and which I would like to address to our speakers from our participants. Let me just be one who facilitates this and not the one who always opinionates. So first is would always be from Valentine. You have had enough opportunity to ask, but there is one question from Akansha Tirki. Akansha, if you could unmute yourself and you could switch on your video, you can ask your question yourself to Eva, ma'am. So please, Akansha, unmute yourself, switch on your video, and put your questions in person.
Oh, yes. Thank you. A very good morning to everyone. Johar. So, my name is Akanksha Tirki, and currently I'm a research scholar at IIT Kharagpur and in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences. So, Eva ma'am, as a literature student, we always feel this lack of resources in our libraries. Like my first instance was when I was in BHU, and BHU has a very huge library. And when I started looking for literary text in tribal writing, there were not many in the literature field. But then you can see in the sociology and anthropology sector. So there are tribal writers, like ma'am said,
Right.
Jacinta Kerketa, she has achieved so many awards, and also other writers. So what could be the possible reason that definitely there is marginalization in literature as well, but what other could be the possible reason for this kind of ignorance towards the tribal writings, and also like what as students we could contribute to this to become as a part of our academia. So I would like to pose this question to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Akansha. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
sure.
Okay, Akansha, that is another question, and I have been very worried about. And I have been, I really appreciate the efforts of people like Dr. of Vandana Tete. She has been going out of her way. She has been hunting down the literature that has been written in the past, compiling them and publishing them. I wonder where she gets the financial support from, because I know that I have tried, and it's not very forthcoming from the government, not so much from the government. So we need to support such efforts. And even Akansha, you see, when you were doing your MA, it would be wonderful if all the universities at the PG level, if when you have the dissertation paper, instead of working on a writer from West Bengal, or from Europe or from America, if the English literature students could work on the translated works of a tribal writer. And you see, we gave you the framework right here today. These little dissertations, and if the professor would encourage the student to encourage the student to make it a paper, a proper research paper, and publish it, the more publications we have, the better. Akansha, you can be you as a research scholar from IIT, you can do wonders. You can encourage others. You can show the way to others. And yes, I've been a little lazy. I too have not been writing and publishing. So we need to look into ourselves and also do so. And whenever there are books available, please purchase them. And if possible, if those of us who have the money, instead of purchasing one, purchase 2 copies, purchase 5 copies, support such indigenous writers. So it would be wonderful for you to not make photocopies of pages, but to purchase the books. Vandana Tete has her own library and sale counter at Ranchi, and kindly visit it. Many of her books are available for sale online, and I, in my small way, have started creating my own library. So I have dedicated one room in my house, which has got 2 bookshelves full of books from all the books that I could lay my hands on. And though I don't read everything, I don't understand anything, I don't profess to be an expert in this area, but I try to learn, and I keep my library open and accessible to everybody. And I try to help out as much as possible. So it is us. Waiting for the government to do it will not help. First of all, we will have to create literature, publish it, make it available for others. Second, after doing it yourself, encourage others to do it. And Akansha, when you are a lecturer yourself, I'm very sure you're going to become a very wonderful professor. I would like you to be the torchbearer for this. Be the person who kind of takes it further. Like Vandana has done it. Okay, we are doing it. We are the first generation. You are the ones who are going to take it even further. So, and all the research scholars listening in today, I would like all of you to purchase it. Even purchasing books is a big encouragement. And yes, Akansha, it is a big concern. Sometimes when even I'm trying to write papers, I do not find adequate amount of primary and secondary sources. And yes, from my experience, I had tried to register a few research scholars under me for their PhD program on these areas. And it was very rightly pointed out to me that I did not have the primary sources in translation ready. So now it is a challenge to me to get all the primary material, primary sources translated into English and ready and published within the next 1 or 2 years, so that these, if not the current batch, the next, for the future students, I could create some kind of primary sources and also secondary sources, like you said, that even in the wonderful library like BHU and JNU, there was not adequate material. So yes, we need to create it. And for the universities in Jharkhand, I would say it would be wonderful if you stock up your registers, a little bit of your funds, if you could, divert, I would not say divert, if you would dedicate towards buying such book, purchasing such books. And also like Nirmala College and Amity University and what the researchers have done. This interdisciplinary project is a landmark. This is absolutely a wonderful, wonderful effort. And this is what we all should be doing. And yeah, I think so. That's all I can say.
I hope you have answered 2 questions by giving this a question from Akansha. I think also I answered the question that Indu has posted in the chat box. And I'll tell you that UGC Stride also got some funds for purchasing book, and we have developed a small library of tribal primary books and secondary sources that we have scattered. We have purchased some, and from this platform, I would request Eva ma'am to give me some entry into your library so that I can be benefited by it.
Ma'am, over here, it's not only for you, ma'am. I would like to extend this invitation to all the research scholars present here. And yes, please, I have a small library. I've got 2 shelves. I got a double-storied house, and I've got my downstairs. I don't rent it out. If you want, you can sit here and spend time in my house. You can refer to my
all you interested researchers who are interested in tribal studies, here is one place in Ranchi where you can visit and you can benefit yourself. But there is another question from Sudeep Ekka, who's waiting for a long time to ask you a question. Sudeep, if you could unmute yourself and switch on your video and ask your question in person. Sudeep, please unmute yourself.
Okay, good morning to all. Oh, this afternoon. Sorry, it's afternoon.
Would like to see you.
Sorry.
Sudeep, you could switch on the right. We can see you. We would like to see you.
Yeah, good afternoon to one and all. And I'm very extremely happy to hear you, ma'am. Okay.
Nice seeing you after a long time, Sudeep.
Yeah.
So you know each other. So please pose your question, Sudeep.
It's my pleasure, ma'am. Ma'am, actually, ma'am, my question is that as you mentioned that Santhali writers used to present their lamentations by their writings. So how it affected the other tribal writers, especially belonging to the Chota Nagpur region and the local women who resides in the Chota Nagpur region?
Thank you for that question, Sudeep. I would like to point out that my presentation was not only about the Santhal women, it was the presentation of all tribal women of Jharkhand. And I have referred to the writings of 5 tribal groups, all right? So when I talk about the lamentations, when I talk about their concerns, it is actually the concerns and lamentations of all the tribal women all together. And it's interesting to see that their concerns are the same. It's not like the Santhal concerns are different from the Mundas and the Kadiyas and the Uraus. And even, I'm very sorry, I had Damyanta Sinku and I had a poems, but somehow the poems were, could not make it, I could not make it to the cut. I had to leave her out. So we did not have any co-writer. But even the concerns of all the tribal people, and if you find the poems, if you find even in the poems of the men, the male writers, you find the same concerns. And I do not know how the tribal writers have not learned from one another. They have all spoken from their heart. Whatever is in their heart, they have just poured it out. And it's not from books or newspapers. It's what they have experienced in their real life. So their teacher is not any other writer or any book or any text. Their teacher is their habitat. Their teacher is the circumstances, the whatever is happening around them. That has been teaching all the tribal writers. I hope that satisfies you, Sudeep.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Sure,
you,
ma'am.
Sudeep. I hope that your question is answered. Now, Renuka Nayak, if you could unmute yourself and pose your question. Renuka Nayak, please unmute yourself and ask your question directly. So,
good afternoon, everyone.
Please give your introduction.
Ma'am, I'm Renuka Nayak from Department of English, Central University of Karnataka, Gulbarga, Karnataka. Ma'am, here also even I tried to work on a tribal writer. The similar, the problems I faced here. There is dearth of literature, and especially in the departments of English, they ask, do you have primary sources, secondary sources? So how do we go about it? In northern India, especially as you have been working, continuously on the tribes there. Similarly, we don't have very active groups here. We have anthropologists and people from social studies. So whatever questions I had, ma'am has already answered. As she rightly pointed out, the tribal women write from their experience, and their experiences and their way of voicing or articulating their issues are definitely different from what the mainstream writers do. So I'm really glad, ma'am, there's no question as such, but I'm really glad that you have given us this platform, and all the research questions and the quests that I have had have been answered. Thank you so much.
I would like to add to that. A little bit, I would like to add to that.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to tell you that, like you say, you talk about, that primary and secondary sources. You see the NEHU, Northeastern Hill University at Shillong. It has done wonders for all the tribal languages of the Northeast. And because of the presence of NEHU, you have, the sudden upsurge of research in tribal languages of the Northeast. But when you come to Jharkhand, you have the Central University of Jharkhand, you have all the various universities of Jharkhand. I think the leadership needs to be taken up by these tribal, universities in the tribal areas, especially Ranchi University, the Vinoba Bhave University, the Dumka, you have the university in Jamshedpur, you have the university in Dumka. And so only 5 out of 32 languages. Can you imagine the kind of neglect that the tribal languages face? And what Nitisha Khalko was talking about, I know her mother, Shanti Khalko. I'm friends with Shanti Khalko. And it feels, and Shanti Khalko herself is a poet and a writer. And even she does not have a job because there are no job opportunities. There are the tribal languages are not being taught. You have got departments for, the Bihari, the languages from Bihar, the languages from Bengal. You have got other languages from neighboring states being taught in Jharkhand. But the Jharkhand tribal languages are just being neglected. So yes, what you said is, and unless we have the academic support, how do we develop a literature? How do we have the primary sources? How do we have the secondary sources? And yes, thank you so much. And yes, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you for reaffirming my belief that we are insiders. I too belong to a nomadic tribe, and my language has no script at all. So either I have to write in Hindi or Kannada or English. So you have affirmed the need need to voice, need to write in our own language. So of late, I have started writing in my own language. I
Very
take
good.
part in poetry competition and other stuff. Earlier, I was not sure. I was not confident of it, but now I have realized my responsibility, being the tribe, being the first generation educated person. It's my duty towards my community, my culture, my language, and women. That I should voice. So I started doing it, and Ma'am Anjana Singh ji and ma'am, all of you have confirmed it and assured that yes, we should do it. Creative writing is the first platform, and then publishing research, academics. Coming into academics is also very important. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, Renuka. For just your suggestion, where can you find your primary and secondary sources in Karnataka? 2 places to go, must visit, that would help you out, is CIIL Mysore. Visit that place. It is a repository of knowledge. It has compiled too many primary sources. There are kiosks inside Mysore, CIIL, where you can type the languages, get the script. Being in Karnataka and not using that as a primary source is something criminal. Use that. And the second place I would suggest you in Karnataka itself, where you can get your primary and secondary sources of tribal literature, is I have a friend in St. Joseph's College, Bangalore. And this is an autonomous college. There they have a research wing, which is Professor Sujit Kumar. He works on the tribal issues across India. And there they have created a research wing where these primary and secondary sources are in my information. So you can use that if you want to as a source, being based in Karnataka and yet accessing it. So just 2 suggestions because you wanted a place to know. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. And one of the research scholars has rightly pointed out, it's in anthropology and other social science disciplines. It's not the Department of English. And as our department, there are sources from Department of English, like this stream alone. So the research methodology is also a problem.
So I think we have
complete my thesis and submitted it.
Okay, so still you can have a postdoc, you can even research freelance, and you can keep contributing in form of books, poems, as Eva ma'am has been talking about. So I think this leads us to the end of question and answer session for the day. But it would be injustice if I don't take a question from YouTube. Eva ma'am, you are aware, you have been watching us on YouTube, that there's a question on YouTube by Ritika Singh, which I would like to pose in front of you on her behalf. That, ma'am, as mentioned in poem, the sensibility of natural things like stones, trembling, leaves, trees, rivers, crying, wind, sounds, so we don't show any understanding. Is the pandemic result of the nature's power? What do you believe? That's a question for you, Eva, ma'am.
Okay. And the last sentence is the pandemic what?
Result of the nature's fury. She wants to say, is the pandemic a result?
Okay. So before I answer that question, I would just like to inform everybody that I had sent the YouTube link to Vandana Tete madam, and she has been with us throughout this entire meeting. So I would like to thank you, Vandana ji, for your encouragement, for making available the texts for all of us and for all the hard work. I know you work very hard. I know you feel sometimes very sometimes you must be feeling so unfulfilled or maybe unappreciated. But let me tell you, there are people all across India, and all the people on this forum, they are kind of very appreciative of the work you do. And please continue, and please thank God that you have recovered from the COVID infection. I was so nervous.
And thank God we have a Vandana Tete in Jharkhand. Thank God we have Vandana Tete in Jharkhand.
Yes. Thank God for Vandana Tete. So welcome, ma'am. And yes, to answer your question, I really am not sure, but yes, the nature fighting back. It could be it. Not only just the pandemic as a backlash for what humans have done, but also the backlash of the cyclones happening more frequently and happening more strongly. The environmentalists, the people who kind of champion the cause of the environment have always been telling us that the forest fires, the severe cyclones, the extreme weather, the nearly 50-degree temperature in Canada, unheard of, unthinkable, things like this happening. And then you have the series of earthquakes right through the pandemic. And I was wondering, what now? What else? And nature behaving strongly with the yellow butterflies. I myself had witnessed all these yellow butterflies flying eastwards by hundreds. I don't know why. And you really don't know. Maybe it's in nature giving us a message. We just need to stop and to listen to and discuss with the earth, like Nirmala Putul says. When did we last stop and discuss with the earth? When did we listen to her pains? When did we try to understand what she is going through? So I think I will not claim that I know the answer to that question, but yes, I believe in that. Yes, I too believe in that. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll ask my co-investigator, Dr. Sayanthini Banerjee, to summarize today's lecture and propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Anjana ma'am. I think she has already summarized most of the things and thanked ma'am enough, but still enough is a small word for her. And still, I would just give a very small gist on the topic, because we've seen that the people or the listeners today were very engrossed, very interested in what you were saying, and they have followed each and every single word that you've said. And here today we have a lot of people from the English literature background, obviously inspired by your profile. So we have the entire English department of Amity University, Jharkhand over here. Special mention to Ayushi Zina ma'am, who has always been with us through all the sessions. And not only that, we have people from other departments, which is not history, which is not English literature, who have also been interested in being a part of this. I mean, from mass comm, journalism, to French professors. In today's lecture, ma'am has begun by talking about or giving us an overview of Jharkhand. And since most of us over here are from Jharkhand, we are very well aware of the kind of potential this state holds in terms of the mineral resources, human resources, etc. And the major concern over here that she raised was why, in spite of being a tribal dominated region, the tribal languages are not getting the kind of due that they should have got from the universities of this place. And as in the previous lectures also, we have heard that this has become a major reason for the employability generation or employment generation of these tribal people who want to work in the field of literature, who want to work in the field of language concerning the tribals or the tribal languages. The data has already been mentioned, and she will be sharing the PPT, so there is no point in dealing with how many endangered languages and how many species and etc. But then one of the major things till now, the lectures that we were hearing were about how we connect women to nature, what is the kind of, how they are living, what are the problems that the tribal women are facing. Today we get a different perspective of the women writers. They are tribal, they are poets, writers, and how they connect to the nature and how they are appealing to the readers to understand this connect, to do something about it, to change or bring about a change in the concerns that she has raised. And she deals with 9 poets, and in almost the common features that we find in them is the fact that they relate so closely to the nature, to the hills, and they are very closely related to the land, the because of mining, because of stone quarrying, how these hills are being destroyed, which they associate as a symbol of worship. And they are in a kind of a loss of identity when they cannot relate to this kind of environment that they are in. that is the reason for their sustenance. And today they find that it is in a very bad shape. There is so much of deforestation, defiling of the nature, and their emotional attachment with the environment is very clearly, succinctly being described through these poets. And the strong will, as Nitisha ma'am had said, that the metaphor for women in the Adivasi culture has never been one of softness. It is very strong, it is very bold. We see here also the women are addressing the concerns. They are talking about the different kind of problems they are facing because of the capitalist concerns and the social injustices happening. There's so much of threat to food security we've seen in the poems. There is they want their habitat to be restored. They are being destroyed, but still they're very strong, and there's a firmness that we see in them, where they say that we want and we will survive from this. She urges the men of the society to do something, to take an action, to do something about it and change the situation. Why aren't they taking a step? So almost every poet that we heard today was trying to tell us that we need to take some steps regarding this. We shouldn't be sitting quietly and see our nature getting destroyed, which is the main source of our sustenance. And finally, she ends by the idea that this concept of patriarchal oppression, men oppressing nature, men oppressing women, was something that is not embedded in the Adivasi culture. It is something which has come as an external influence because of the so-called development. And this development has led to all these kind of discussions and discourses that we're having today regarding feminism, regarding oppression, regarding subjugation, distress, etc. So the kind of development that should have taken place is not, or this is not a holistic kind of a development which is taking into consideration the Adivasi culture and the civilization, which is towards its depletion now, especially in terms of the language. And this was the major address, and she leaves us with some food of thought and makes us realize our duty towards the place, the culture that we reside in, and what we should do to take it out from the strangulation of this so-called development. Thank you, ma'am. Moving towards the formal vote of thanks, I would again like to thank you for your time, for your knowledge sharing, for such a session replete with beautiful poems, giving us an insight into the literary world of the tribal culture, which we didn't have till now. Thank you so much, ma'am. And I am humbled that you could answer me. You could take up the various queries and the calls, whether it was on time or 10 minutes later does not matter. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time. And we would love to listen to you again, because again, as I said, enough is a wrong word to be used for you. We couldn't have enough of you. So we would definitely love to listen to you again. Thank you so much, ma'am. I would also like to thank our principal investigator, Dr. Anjana Singh, for carrying forward the 6-day guest lecture so beautifully and comparing it so beautifully, and so enthusiastic about, at times we feel that she's more enthusiastic than the speaker to answer the questions. And obviously, never to note that this enthusiasm comes from a deep knowledge about this particular topic and the kind of vast research that she has done in this area. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your insights too into this entire guest lecture. Obviously, our research assistants, Hani Kumari and Vinod Kumar, who have helped us throughout this event. Thank you for your support too. And last but not the least, the most important two organizations because of which we are here holding this guest lecture series and having this deliberation is Nirmala College, Ranchi, and Amity University, Jharkhand. So a special thanks to the principal, Nirmala College, Ranchi, Dr. Sister Jyoti Kispota, and our Vice Chancellor, Amity University, Jharkhand, Professor Dr. Raman Kumar Jha, sir. Thank you so much for your support. In spite of not being able to be present, though they wished to, but due to some constraints in the workplace, they couldn't be present with us in each of the lectures. But they have still listened to us through the YouTube links that have been shared with them and send in their comments directly to us that they have really liked it. And it has been a kind of immense knowledge sharing for them too, because they don't belong to this field and it was new for them to learn about all these things. So thank you so much, everyone. Tomorrow's link will be shared as we do in the group, and you will be getting the summary both in English and in Hindi in your registered WhatsApp group. Thank you so much, everyone. With this, we come to the end of this 4th day of